Subscribe, and let me know in the comments what city you're watching from. I love seeing where everyone's tuning in from.
The 1983 Baikal diving incident officially appeared in internal reports as a routine deep water survey compromised by sudden equipment malfunction, but every classified memorandum from that period contradicts the sanitized version. The dive team of 7 entered the water at 6:41, descending toward a narrow geological trench marked on Soviet hydrographic maps only as Sector G12, a designation normally reserved for military test corridors. Within the first 100 meters, they reported unusual turbulence, slow, rhythmic pulses rather than natural currents, followed by brief spikes on their modified sonar units. These sonar devices, recovered years later from sealed crates, contained circuit modules not found in any catalog of the era, and stamped with a triangular insignia no engineer could trace. The final clear transmission at 7:03 captured one diver saying, "Hold formation, it's below us," before the channel erupted into layered static that analysts described as not random but tonal. The rescue operation launched at 10:59, and when the first team reached the trench shelf they found the diver's guide cable cut cleanly, with no fraying, as though sliced by industrial machinery. Even stranger were the objects scattered near the shelf, a metallic spindle with a honeycomb texture, resembling aeronautic alloys decades ahead of their time, a spherical node that released brief electromagnetic bursts when handled, and a transparent plate with etched concentric lines that researchers later concluded were calibration marks for an unknown optical system. None of these items appeared in Soviet inventories, and metallurgical testing indicated microstructures inconsistent with any forging or casting technique known at the time. Yet the most chilling detail was the configuration of the abandoned gear. The suits had been unsealed deliberately, joint by joint, laid out in an orderly manner that suggested the divers had removed them calmly, without struggle, and without any trace of panic. Internal testimonies from the rescue team, quietly archived under the classification "Special Handling Only," described anomalies that later reviewers tried to dismiss as stress-induced hallucinations, though the consistency of the accounts made that explanation impossible. Several rescuers noted that as they approached the trench shelf, their depth gauges began oscillating rapidly, swinging between shallow and impossible depths, while the water temperature fluctuated in sharp 3-5-degree bursts. One diver reported seeing faint amber lights deep within the trench, stationary, unnaturally symmetrical, ranged in a triangular pattern that momentarily illuminated the rock walls before fading. Another recalled hearing a low-frequency hum reverberating through his regulator, a vibration that continued even after he surfaced. A confiscated film reel, later leaked by an anonymous archivist, showed a piece of the recovered equipment up close, a rectangular device the size of a pack of cigarettes, containing an array of fiber-like threads that glowed faintly when exposed to magnetic fields. When a naval research lab attempted to sample the material, the threads disintegrated into fine dust that resisted chemical classification, described only as composite particulate of unknown origin. More disturbing was a page from the operations log written by the mission overseer, who noted that the divers' oxygen consumption had dropped sharply in their final minutes, far below what was physiologically possible, suggesting the men were either unconscious or in a state of near-suspended metabolic activity. The official investigation concluded that the divers suffered from rapid-onset hypoxia, yet interviews conducted in the 1990s with surviving technicians revealed that the biological panel showed no signs of asphyxiation. Instead, the tissue samples, quietly referenced in one declassified medical summary, displayed unusual micro-lesions similar to those produced by high-intensity acoustic exposure. Still, no underwater acoustic weapons were ever tested in Baikal, at least not according to any official archive. When civilian researchers revisited the case decades later, they uncovered a sealed subfolder marked "Store Separately," containing 30 photographs, handwritten transcriber notes, and fragments of 2 magnetic tapes labeled only C1 for observer. The photos depicted the diver's final route plotted on a hydrographic chart, but what stood out was a faint grid overlay, clearly added later, mapping a structure beneath the trench floor, shaped like a crescent with radiating lines resembling conduits or corridors. Official geophysical scans deny any such formation exists, yet the private lab that examined the images concluded that the grid alignment matched variations in Baikal's magnetic field recorded in the 1970s. One of the magnetic tapes, though heavily degraded, contained intermittent clicks and a pattern of pulsating tones spaced in exact intervals. Analysts compared the rhythm to encoded sonar pings, but the source remained unidentified. One sonar technician noted that the trench walls appeared to flex on the readings, expanding by several meters in one sweep and contracting in the next, despite there being no geological activity recorded at the time. Another document detailed a classified experiment conducted 2 weeks before the divers vanished, involving a low-frequency projector lowered near the same sector. The test allegedly produced anomalous reflections described as layered echoes, which mimicked the signature of a moving object roughly the size of a small submarine. Despite repeated scanning, no physical target was ever identified. Among the most disturbing discoveries was a field notebook kept by a junior researcher, its margins filled with hurried sketches of geometric patterns, found etched into the recovered metallic plate. Some sketches showed overlapping triangles with minute distortions along the edges, resembling wave interference diagrams. Others depicted incomplete spirals annotated with phrases like resonant guidance and depth-responsive grid, but the final page contained just one line. They reacted to the frequency. No one could determine whether they referred to natural formations, the divers themselves, or an unknown presence, coupled with a classified statement from a sonar officer, who swore he heard metal on metal noises rising from the deep the night before the operation. These fragments convinced later analysts that Sector G12 was far from inert. Years later, when a private research expedition attempted to survey the same trench using modern autonomous submersibles, their drones malfunctioned in ways eerily similar to the 1983 accounts. Navigation systems became erratic, thrusters froze mid-movement, and onboard cameras recorded brief distortions, thin, horizontal streaks resembling reflections from unseen surfaces. One drone captured a single clear frame before shutting down, a faint, vertical alignment of glowing points deep in the black water, positioned like a doorway standing upright on the lake. The expedition leader refused to release the image publicly, but confirmed its authenticity to multiple interviewers under condition of anonymity. Meanwhile, archived medical reports from the original rescue team revealed suppressed data about their post-mission symptoms, heightened sensitivity to sound, recurring pressure headaches, and in 2 cases, chronic insomnia accompanied by vivid hallucinations of descending lights. A retired naval doctor later admitted that blood samples from the rescuers displayed unusual shifts in electrolyte balance, something he described as a temporary cellular stress pattern, commonly associated with powerful infrasound exposure. Yet the Soviet military never acknowledged operating low-frequency acoustic devices in Baikal after the mysterious pre-incident test. Adding to the puzzle, one classified logistics record from the same year listed a manifested cargo, shipped from a northern research port to a secure storage site in Siberia. The cargo's description: containers, composite, inline sealed, Category C14, handle with restricted protocol. At least 3 containers were signed out shortly after the diver's disappearance, with no return entries on record. Their contents remain officially undocumented, though a smuggled photo from the storage bay shows long cylindrical crates lined with insulation panels, suggesting something fragile, pressure-sensitive, and likely not of terrestrial military origin. By the 2010s, researchers began to suspect that the divers had stumbled onto something not geological but artificial, perhaps an abandoned Cold War installation, or something far older. A leaked portion of the hydro mining survey from 1978, 4 years before the incident, described magnetic anomalies consistent with repetitive pattern structures, accompanied by diagrams resembling tunnels or conduits buried deep beneath the lake. Official geologists dismissed these claims as acoustic artifacts, yet their internal memos described the anomalies as intricately uniform, unlike natural formations. More telling was a fragment of magnetic tape, discovered in a mislabeled archival box. The audio, heavily warped, contained rhythmic pulses followed by a rising whine that cut abruptly into silence. Audio analysts identified harmonic patterns within the pulses, suggesting they were not random noise, but a signal of some kind, possibly a response to the low-frequency test conducted days prior to the diver's descent. Even more unsettling was a report from a hydrological lab, stating that water samples taken hours after the incident contained trace amounts of rare isotopes not normally found in freshwater bodies. These isotopes decayed rapidly and disappeared by the next sampling cycle, as if introduced through a transient event. Combined with the earlier accounts of electromagnetic interference and visual anomalies, the data painted a picture of a localized disturbance, triggered by the diver's presence or equipment. Interview transcripts from retired officers hinted that higher command classified the trench as a reactive zone, though none explained what it was reacting to. One chilling quote from a restricted interview read, "The lake opened for them. It closed just as fast." In 2021, A new wave of digital declassifications exposed one final layer of the story, an unredacted field report from a topographer, who arrived at Baikal 2 weeks after the disappearance. His notes detailed faint trenches carved into the lake, running parallel like tracks or rails, none present on earlier sonar maps. The report included sketches of peculiar indentations, resembling anchoring points arranged in a wide arc. A single line stood out near the end. These are not collapse zones, they are manufactured. Around the same time, a team reviewing archive bathymetric data detected a recurring shape beneath the sediment, a crescent-like formation almost identical to the one discovered on the classified hydrographic grid decades earlier. When overlaid with the 1983 dive coordinates, the shape intersected precisely with the location where the divers vanished. A final reference appeared in a 1984 internal memo. Activity threshold exceeded. SEAL sector G12 indefinitely. The memo listed a monitoring directive for ray emergence phenomena, suggesting that whatever the divers encountered may not have been static, but capable of movement or activation in response to certain environmental triggers. Curiously, modern sonar scans taken by civilian vessels occasionally show transient reflections, brief flashes of symmetrical lines or clustered spheres, always in the same region. Officials attribute these to equipment glitches, yet one unverified recording from a fishing boat microphone captured a deep, slow resonance matching the harmonics found in the old magnetic tape. If the divers truly encountered an unknown structure, technology, or presence beneath Baikal, then the final unanswered question remains: was it dormant until 1983, or did their descent wake something that was never meant to be disturbed?
Subscribe, and let me know in the comments what city you're watching from. I love seeing where everyone's tuning in from.